This is Surfing Through Cinema. I'm your host, Hawaii Harry. Today I'll be discussing the next film for Cinephile Week. Starring Jack Lemmon, Shirley MacLaine, and Fred MacMurray, this episode is all about The Apartment from 1960, directed by Billy Wilder. Okay, so some technical details about The Apartment. So to give the illusion of a very large office, there were adults, children, and even cutouts used to get the correct perspective, since studios back then were kind of limited in space. They devised this so that audiences would really believe there were thousands of workers inside of that building. And another technical detail, the Christmas party that's a pretty key moment in the film was actually filmed December 23rd, 1959. And Billy Wilder did this to get the correct feeling with it, the correct Christmas cheer with it, and holiday mood. And then the last technical detail, this was the last black and white film to win Best Picture until The Artist in 2011. Now some of you may say, but Schindler's List is in black and white, and the only reason why it's not considered is there's a one scene with the girl in the red dress. And because of that kind of disqualifies it as being completely in black and white. Okay, so let's get into the plot. So C.C. Baxter, played by Jack Lemmon, he has 4 of his executive bosses using his apartment for their love affairs. And he's doing this because he's kind of a wimpy man. He's only doing this so he can be an executive like them. And they keep promising him, oh yeah, we'll put in the good word for you. But never delivering on their promise. And some of them never paying him back for the items they use within his house. This draws the attention of personnel director Jeff Sheldrake, played by Fred MacMurray, who also wants to use the key so he could continue his love affairs. And kind of in exchange for the key, he gives Baxter 2 tickets to see Music Man, and Baxter decides he wants to take Fran, who he has kind of a crush on, to this. He wants to do it as his first date with her. And she initially turns him down, but decides that she will do it. She just says she has a date beforehand, and she'll try to make the show afterward. And then it cuts to her date, and it turns out she's one of Sheldrake's former mistresses, and he actually still loves her and wants to get back with her. But she says it was just a summer fling. She doesn't want to keep going with it. She gives in and they go to Baxter's apartment, kind of leaving him. And she stands him up. He's all alone waiting outside for her to come to the play, but she never does. So then he goes home instead. And it cuts to a Christmas party where Baxter learns that Sheldrake has had lots of affairs with women in the office, including Fran. And this kind of leaves him depressed when he realizes that's who Sheldrake was seeing in his apartment. And so he decides himself to go out and find a random lady at a bar and takes her home with him, where he finds Fran passed out from taking pills in an attempt of suicide. And as it turns out, it's because Sheldrake wants to leave his family to live with her and marry her. And she doesn't know how to feel, and she's very confused and very depressed because, it's very conflicting for her. And so Baxter takes care of her and nurses her back to health, and they both miss 2 days of work, and everyone is wondering and worrying where they're at. But eventually she gets picked up by her brother-in-law and is taken back to work. And Sheldrake, he's thrown out of his house because his secretary revealed to Sheldrake's wife his many, many years of affairs, including with herself. And so now he sees this as a perfect moment to really get with Fran. There's nothing really in his way anymore. And he promotes Baxter and asks for the key, but Baxter is kind of sick of this whole life and realizes how awful it is. And instead he quits his job. And so Fran realizes that Baxter actually loves her, and she loves him too. So she rushes over to his house and finds that he's packing to leave the area. And she stops him, and they sit and play gin rummy again. and he confesses his love to her, and that's where the film ends. It ends on kind of a sweet and happy note. All right, so that's the plot to The Apartment from 1960. I'm going to go on a break real quick, but first, here's a message from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here's how. It's totally free. There are tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your computer and even your cell phone. But that's not all. Anchor distributes your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You could even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor is everything you need to make a complete podcast all in one small place. So go on and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Okay, so we're back from a break. Now I'm going to get into some critical views, my personal views on The Apartment. So, Roger Ebert gives it 100 out of 100, and he praises Shirley MacLaine's performance, saying her kind of dark persona kind of balances out Jack Lemmon's comedic performance and kind of brings a nice harmony to both of them. And then Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 93%, and they love the pathos and the romance and the tender humor that are within this film. And then it has an audience score on IMDb of 8.3. So across the board, it's a pretty popular, pretty beloved movie, and is in all of the major books, including 1001 Movies to See Before You Die. It's on AFI's Best Films list. It's on a lot of these lists. And many consider it to be Billy Wilder's best film. Alright, so now I'll get into my personal views. I actually disagree. This isn't my favorite Billy Wilder film. I think Sunset Boulevard, then Double Indemnity, then this film. Of course, I've only seen 3 of his, but I personally did not like this movie. I thought it was kind of depressing and sad, which is fine. It's just, it's labeled on iTunes and all these other places as a comedy. So I was expecting more of a slapstick, really funny movie, not this kind of sad and depressing one. That being said, though, I think Jack Lemmon, he's phenomenal. He's a really comedic actor, but he also shows his dramatic gravitas. He shows that he could be serious too, and it's very nice and really great seeing a comedic actor doing dramatic performances. And a lot of times, the comedy actors keep surprising me. They can really be dramatic too, and that's really cool. Like I said, I don't consider it a comedy. I consider it more of a romantic drama that has some comedic moments in it. Just completely labeling it as a comedy, I think is, not a good idea. I don't think that fully encompasses what the movie really is. And so, no one really to blame, but I don't really consider it a comedy, and I give it a 7 out of 10. I think it kind of dragged out a little bit. And it's only a 2-hour and 5-minute movie. That's not very long, but there were some moments that felt really, really long, especially when they were in the apartment for those 2 days. It felt a little too long. But do I recommend this movie? Yeah, I recommend checking it out. It's one of those movies people recommend you see all the time. So I recommend it as a one-time watch. I don't think it has too much rewatchability, but nevertheless, I give it a 7 out of 10. Alright, so those are my thoughts and feelings on The Apartment. Next time, I'll be discussing the next film for Classic Hollywood Week. From comedic director and master of stunt work Buster Keaton, this episode is all about The General. Alright, well until next time, this has been Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry. Take care. Thank you for listening to Surfing Through Cinema. Make sure to check us out on Facebook at Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry and on Instagram with Surfing Through Cinema. We also have a website, www.anchor.fm/surfing through cinema, where you can learn more details on upcoming episodes and on past episodes.